Germany declares Ukraine's Holodomor famine a genocide. Germany's parliament declared the famine in Ukraine in the 1930s under Soviet leader Joseph Stalin a genocide. It comes as Ukraine warned Russia is using similar tactics in its war today.
Here's a summary of the article.
German lawmakers on Wednesday passed a resolution declaring the starvation of millions of Ukrainians under Soviet leader Joseph Stalin a genocide. Russia's current war of aggression against Ukraine stands in this historical tradition, said conservative lawmaker Volker Ulrich. Ukraine's description of the deaths of an estimated 4 million people in the famine of 1932–33 as the Holodomor roughly translates to death by starvation. In 2006, the Ukrainian parliament classified Holodomor as a genocide against the country's people. Over the weekend, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky charged that Russia was using similar tactics in its war in Ukraine today. Russia has targeted critical infrastructure across Ukraine in recent weeks through waves of airstrikes that have killed civilians and sparked widespread power outages. According to the Holodomor Museum in Kyiv, 16 states in addition to Ukraine so far have recognized the famine as genocide: Australia, Ecuador, Estonia, Canada, Colombia, Georgia, Hungary, Latvia, Lithuania, Mexico, Paraguay, Peru, Poland, Portugal, the United States and the Vatican.
This post received a score of 10,000, with an upvote ratio of 95%. Here are the top comments in response to this article.
Oh boy, this commentary section is gonna be agitated.
The legal definition of genocide boils down to intent. Mariupol and the Holocaust are obviously genocides, as is technically the Uyghur crisis according to some allegations. Cambodia under Pol Pot technically isn't, as it was indiscriminate murder of citizens by regime, and the Soviet famine in Kazakhstan for instance isn't generally considered one either because there's too little evidence that intentional persecution of Kazakhs was the driver of the famine as opposed to simply terrible policy.
Pol Pot targeted specific ethnic minorities, they just were not the bulk because of their relatively small population.
He also targeted people he considered intellectuals, although that categorization was wildly indiscriminate and random. Even wearing eyeglasses could get you sent to a death camp for being an intellectual. Irony here of course is that Pol Pot was himself, for all intents and purposes, an intellectual.
Wasn't Pol Pot kicked out from most of the schools he attended and struggled continuously in education? He had rich parents that paid for him to have a good start. But I wouldn't call him an intellectual. I have too little knowledge on the topic to make any certain statements, but from reading his bio it sounds like he hated intellectuals because he couldn't fit in among them and glorified the farm lifestyle he had during childhood, thinking that it's the only thing that matters in a country, while also ironically never doing any actual farm work in his entire life.
All government parties and CDU/CSU voted for. AfD and Die Linke abstained.
Mark Jongen from the far-right AfD called it a crime against humanity, while accusing the voting parties to have played down other communist crimes in the past. He also rejects any parallels to Russia's current behavior towards Ukraine. Gregor Gysi from the left Die Linke also calls it a crime against humanity and shares his impression that this would put Stalin and Hitler's crimes on the same level, which he rejects. At the same time, he accentuated the role of the USSR in the defeat of Hitler. Rough translation from an Article 1 read at tagesschau.de.
Greater than, and shares his impression that this would put Stalin and Hitler's crimes on the same level, which he rejects. Yeah, wouldn't want Stalin to look too bad now, would we? The guy who is thought to be responsible for at least 6 million deaths.
Efforts to put Stalin on the level of Hitler largely exist to relativize what Hitler did, since factually there is a gulf between them. Please do not attempt to quote the Black Book of Communism and its terrible scholarship here. It considers Nazi soldiers killed in World War II, victims of communism, and pulls many other kinds of shenanigans. Also, the people insisting on Stalin's many crimes rarely talk about the crimes of other 20th century monsters like Winston Churchill, even though they are more directly comparable to Hitler's.
This video was automatically created by Reddit to speech. The article and comments in this video were selected from Reddit according to their upvotes, and any paraphrasing was performed by smmry.com, without any human intervention.